Measurement, as we before just mentioned, is a very important part of quantitative research. In quantitative research, actually, in the literature, we discuss about and the literature emphasize on two types of theory. So one type of theory is common theory that all of us know, and we know for relationship between variables and support hypothesis, we need to apply theory, right? But actually this type of theory we call structural theory. This type of theory is some type of theory that support a structural relationship. Last week we discussed this type of theory, right? So for our quantitative research, we need to find a suitable theory or more than one theory to support all hypotheses and relationships. But actually in quantitative research, we have another type of theory. This is not very common that we use a word of theory for this part, but actually this is something similar to theory. This type of theory we call measurement theory. Measurement theory refer to measurement of our variable, measurement of our construct, our factor, independent and dependent variable, right? So a structural theory refer to relationship between variables, relationship between IV and DV. But measurement theory refer to measuring, how we measure each variable. How we measure each variable, right? So measurement theory or measurement is very important in quantitative research. What's the meaning of measurement? Actually, measurement is connected with variable. What's variable? Variable is something changes, something varies in different cases. So to conduct a quantitative research, we measure level of this variable. We measure value of this variable because the value of this variable is different from one case to another case. And when we want to see a relationship between variables, actually we assess relationship between these changes. Variable A change with when variable B changes, right? For example, we have two variables, satisfaction and loyalty. We say loyalty change, loyalty increase when satisfaction increase. Loyalty decrease when satisfaction decrease. Means for different cases, satisfaction changes, and also for changing satisfaction, loyalty will change, right? So this is the basic concept and meaning of variable. Measurement is connected to variable. We have different types of variables. Some variables are very objective variable and can be measured directly by some tools like height, like weight, like temperature, right? Also, these variables are some type of variable that we use in quantitative research, especially for sciences discipline. They are very objective. You have some tool to measure weight, right? To measure temperature. But some variables are not like this type of variables, are not objective, are subjective variable. This subjective variable is not easy to measure. And we need the robust method, robust measurement method measurement tool to measure these subjective variables, like satisfaction, like attitude, like depression, like loneliness, right? Like performance. So this type of variable called unobserved variable. First type of variable that mostly used in science discipline, that are objective variable we can measure by some tool called observed variable. So we can observe, we can measure directly. Unobserved variable or latent variable that we use most of time in social science, this type of variable called unobserved variable or latent variable. This type of variable is not cannot be measured directly, right? Cannot be measured directly. And this type of variable are measured indirectly based on some items, based on some questions, based on some indicators. We measure satisfaction based on some indicators. So the concept of measurement is much more complicated in social science compared to science discipline. So here is the difference between paradigm. You remember last week we discussed about positivism paradigm and realism paradigm. Positivism paradigm, okay, we think all concept, all phenomena are measurable or objective, we can measure. But actually positivist, and from positivism perspective, we work with some variables that are observable, some variable that can be measured, can be observed directly. But in social science, we work with some variables, still we think we can measure social phenomena, and social phenomena exist in real world and are measurable, but the type of measurement and the method of measurement is different with objective indicators, objective variables, and science discipline. So measurement is much more complicated compared to science discipline, because in social science we work with unobserved and latent variables, right? Here is different types of variable. We have categorical variable, continuous variable, nominal, ordinal. Under categorical, we have nominal. You need to understand the meaning and the type of your variable. For example, dichotomous variable is a categorical variable only with two levels, yes and no, 1 and 2, 0 and 1. Gender, male and female. Right? So a variable only with two levels, with two values, is dichotomous variable. Nominal variable is a categorical variable, but with more than two groups, with more than two levels, two values. For example, nationality. We have respondents from 10 countries. So we categorize all respondents under these 10 countries. So we have 10 values, 1 to 10. 1 is from China, 1 is for China, 2 is for Malaysia, 3 is for Singapore, 4 is for Iran, 5 is for Turkey and other countries, right? So nominal variable is categorical variable with more than two groups. Ordinal variable also is categorical variable with more than two groups. But what's the difference between nominal and ordinal? In nominal variable, we don't have any order for numbers, for groups, for values. But in ordinal, we have, right? For a nominal variable, for example, for countries, right? For nationalities, you have 10 countries, different 10 countries. But you can say there is any order for country 1 to country 10. 1 can be China, can be Singapore, can be Malaysia, can be UK, can be US or other country. 2 can be any of nationalities. 3 can be any of countries, right? So we don't have any order for these 10 countries, these 10 numbers, and for these nominal variable. But what about ordinal? Ordinal, we have more than 2 groups, but still we have order. For example, education, right? For education, for example, we have 5 groups, right? Diploma, degree, postgrad, master, PhD, and secondary school, for example. So we have 5 groups, right? But these 5 groups can be ranked, So if we give 1 to secondary school, we have to give 2 to diploma, 3 to degree, 4 to master, because there is a rank between these 5 numbers. Or, for example, you use Likert scale to measure satisfaction. You ask your respondent to answer between 1 to 5. 1 is strongly disagree, 5 is strongly agree. If they answer 3 and 4, 4 and 3 has significant difference. And there is a rank for these 5 numbers. You know, if they answer 4, 4 means 4 higher than 3, and 3 is higher than 2, and 2 is higher than 1. So there is a rank between, and there is an order between values. So this is ordinal variable. So for 2 groups of categorical variable, nominal and ordinal, we need to be very careful for this rank and order. Later in analysis, we'll see for nominal variable and ordinal variable, we have to apply different analysis technique. So we cannot use same analysis for nominal variable and for ordinal variable. Another type of variable is here set numerical and categorized in 2 groups, interval and ratio. But in quantitative analysis technique, we treat different types of variable under numerical as a scale variable, right? As a scale variable. So we have different numbers for this type of variable, and this can be continuous, can be discrete, but we have many numbers, not only a few groups. So this can be under numerical or scale variable. So this is very close to ordinal. Ordinal is most of time we treat scale variable or numerical variable and ordinal variable in the same way. But it's different with nominal and dichotomous variable. This is a graph from Sanders. So you can see different types of variable from this graph, but this graph is not very accurate. So just you can get an overview for different types of data, different types of variable. Okay. Actually, for unobserved variable in social science, we have 2 main types of unobserved variable. Some of unobserved variable actually based on realism paradigm. Some of unobserved variable exist in real world. For example, attitude, satisfaction, loyalty. So these latent variable and unobserved variable are something that exists in real world. Satisfaction exists, right? We don't create satisfaction. We don't create loyalty. Loyalty is a specific concept that exists in real world, right? But also there are some unobserved variables that we create, we design, like performance. We design a performance scale or some other types of variable. Later, I will give you some example for this type of unobserved variable that we design. This type of unobserved variable in the literature called artifact. So this is not real. This is something that we create, we design and we create. So under latent variable and unobserved variable, we have these two different types. Okay, later I will go back to this one. This is a very important concept in social science, in measurement level and measurement theory. When we work with the unobserved variable, we have two main types of unobserved variable. Actually, three main types. But under formative, we have two different types, causal and composite. Right? But in general, we have two main types of unobserved or latent variable in social science: reflective and formative. You need to know what type of items, what type of question you use to measure latent variable or latent variable. Is it reflective or formative? Why we need to know? Because assessment of reflective and formative latent variables are totally different. We have to apply different criteria, different quality criteria to assess reflective and formative latent variables. So you need to know. And also when you design your questionnaire, for reflective and formative items and questions, you need to follow different directions, even in designing your questionnaire. So it's very important in measurement level to understand the meaning of reflective and formative and to realize what's the nature of your latent variable. Is it formative or reflective? You can go through a slide, and I have detailed explanation in a slide and also my video about reflective and formative. So here I try to briefly explain formative and reflective. Actually, reflective items and reflective questions refer to some types of this figure is very good to understand the meaning of reflective and formative latent variable and items. One side, left side, is reflective items to measure satisfaction, reflective question to measure satisfaction. And right side is formative items and question to measure satisfaction. Both items and question measure satisfaction, but one is reflective and another one is formative. So in different occasions, in different research, it's possible to apply both reflective and formative, but you have to realize and identify which one actually you use, because assessment of measurement model will be different, right? Okay, what's the meaning of reflective? When we apply some items, that these items are similar items, and one item independently can reflect whole meaning of latent variable, whole meaning of variable, whole meaning of construct. This item is reflective. What does it mean? Look at this item. I feel well in this hotel. This is satisfaction about hotel, right? Three items are applied to measure satisfaction. One item is I feel well in this hotel. Another one is I'm always happy to stay in this hotel. And the other item is I recommend this hotel to others, right? So we have three items here, right? Okay, my question, if I answer to first question, strongly agree. I ask this question, I give you this question to you and ask you to rank between strongly disagree to strongly agree with this statement, right? Okay, I ask you what the level of agreement you have, and you answer strongly agree for first question. And then I ask second question. I'm always happy to stay in this hotel. What's your expectation for answer of second question? You expect that answer to second question also should be agree or strongly agree, right? Should be something similar to first question. It's not possible that I feel well in this hotel, but I'm not happy to stay. I strongly disagree to stay, right? So answer to second question should be similar to first one. And what about third one? Also third one answer should be similar to 1 and 2, first and second question. So the answer to these items are very high correlated and similar, right? Another way, each question and item independently can reflect, can represent the meaning of satisfaction, right? If I say I feel well in this hotel, it means I'm almost satisfied. So this can represent the meaning of satisfaction. This is the type of reflective latent variable, reflective items to measure latent variable. But what about formative? In other side, right side, I have formative construct, right? What's the first question? The first question is the service of this hotel is good. So I answer strongly agree with this question, with this item, with this statement. What's the second one? The personnel is friendly. So second question is about personnel. Third one is about room equipment. The room is well equipped. Now, my question, is it possible I answer to first question strongly agree because the service of this hotel is very good? But my answer to second question is disagree. Is it possible? Right? It's possible. Because It's very common that in one hotel, the service is very good. This hotel provide very good quality service, but personnel of this hotel are not friendly, right? Service is good, but equipment, I'm not satisfied with equipment, right? So it's possible to answer, to have different answer for different questions, right? This type of items, this type of questions are formative items. In formative items, all items together can create, can form the meaning of satisfaction. One question, my satisfaction about service, cannot represent whole meaning of satisfaction, right? I need to ask different questions, and all these questions together can represent, can identify level of my satisfaction. So these type of questions together form satisfaction. Form satisfaction. So in first type of item, each item can reflect the meaning of satisfaction. But in another type, all items together should form and can form satisfaction, not independently. So all items to measure, all items together can measure satisfaction. And if we delete one item, it means we delete some part of meaning of satisfaction. If we delete service and only keep personnel is friendly and room is well equipped, so we measure satisfaction only from these two aspects. We miss service quality. So this is the meaning of formative construct. To design our questionnaire, we need to be very careful for type of items that we apply and we adopt from previous study. One very, very important thing, in quantitative research, we cannot develop items to measure latent variable in our own way, based on our own opinion, idea. We have to adopt this item from previous study. So we need to use established items from previous study. If we don't have, we need to run a qualitative phase to identify valid and suitable items. So if you conduct a pure quantitative research, you have to adopt item from previous study. But when you adopt item, you need to make sure and you need to identify your items are reflective or formative. So this is the meaning of reflective and formative items and latent variable. Any question? Yes.
Yes, Prof. Amdola, I had one question. Could you please just you were saying something about like in reflective we can measure each item, and in the other one we have to have a formative, like altogether a wholesome idea, something like that. I'm just a little bit confused. Like, could you please just repeat?
No, in
that
reflective items and reflective construct, each item can independently represent whole meaning of construct. For example, when we say I feel well in this hotel, means my answer to this question, to this item, can represent my satisfaction. And also second question, I'm happy to stay in this hotel. I recommend this hotel to my friend, to others. So each question can reflect meaning of satisfaction. But in formative, you need to measure all items together, because my satisfaction about service is different with my satisfaction about personnel and my satisfaction about room equipment. If we may add another items, for example, if we add the environment, my satisfaction about environment, my satisfaction about accessibility of this hotel. Also, these items can represent different aspects of satisfaction, right? So to have whole meaning of satisfaction, I have to include all items from different aspects, right? From these different aspects to measure satisfaction. If we delete one of them, it means I miss some part of meaning of satisfaction, right?
Yes. And we cannot just delete one item because since you said that measurement scale, we have to for quantitative we have to adapt it. So we have to depend like what are the items already given in the previously built measurement scale, right?
Yes. Yes.
So we cannot just like do it by our own choice. So
Right.
we have to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. This is equation to represent reflective construct, and this one is mathematical equation to represent formative construct. So you can see even mathematical representation of formative and reflective are different. In formative, you can see here x1 is item 1, for example. Item 1 is lambda 1 multiply latent variable plus error, right? So here you can see x1 is based on lambda 1 portion of latent variable plus error, means each item can represent part of variance of or part of latent variable plus error. Okay, this lambda is loading. This lambda is loading the reflective construct. So the loading, when we have reflective construct, we say loading should be higher than 0.7. Because 0.7, because loading squared is variance, explained variance of latent variable. So loading to the power of 2, if loading is 0.7, 0.7 to the power of 2 will be 0.5. It means at least item or question should reflect 50% of meaning of latent variable. And 50% can be error, not more than 50%. Because each item is supposed to represent whole meaning of construct, but it's not possible to represent whole meaning, but at least should represent 50% of meaning. This 50% meaning is shown by this lambda, this loading. And this loading should be greater than 0.7 to confirm and to approve at least 50% of meaning of construct reflected on item. So for reflective construct, we need to measure these lambda 1, lambda 2, and lambda 2 and lambda 3. Any items we have. And the loading should be higher than 0.7 to make sure this item can at least represent 50% of meaning of latent variable. This is mathematical equation or mathematical understanding of reflective construct. Because reflective construct, each item can or should represent whole meaning of latent variable. So lambda or loading is very important and should be greater than 0.7 to make sure 50% of latent variable, 50% of meaning of latent variable. But in formative is different. Okay, you can see the mathematical equation of formative. X1 plus X2 plus X3. So these X1, X2, and X3 together can create latent variable. What's the share? What's the portion of X1 is W. So the portion of meaning of latent variable from X1 is W1. From X2 is W2. And from X3 is W3. So W1 X1, W2 X2, W3 X3 together form latent variable. But in formative construct, always we have some missing variable, some missing items, like satisfaction here. Okay. Here to measure satisfaction, we have service, we have personnel, and we have room equipment. But we don't have environment, we don't have accessibility, or some other possible items. So we have some missing part, right? Okay, here. So we have item 1, we have item 2, and we have item 3. But we miss item 4 and 5. So here, error for formative is missing items. So we have an error here in latent variable level, not in item level. And this error is missing items. Missing items. This error for formative variable and missing item should not be more than 50%. So there are some tests. There are some tests for formative construct to measure this error and make sure that this error is less than 50%. And all these 3 items, all formative items, can create at least 50% of satisfaction, 50% of latent variable. So you can see a difference between a mathematical presentation of formative and reflective construct. Okay, any question for formative and reflective? Okay. Yes.
How can we judge how many missing variables we miss?
Missing variable is we cannot know about number of missing variable, but we can calculate actually the share of missing items. And this share, there are some method to calculate this error term, variance of error term. And this variance of error term or missing item should not be more than 50% of variance of latent variable. Okay. Later, I will show you how we calculate this percentage.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. This is another type of latent variable under formative. We call this type of latent variable composite. There is one difference between composite and formative. But actually, we call this type of formative causal formative. And this type of formative composite formative. Composite formative. So formative includes two types, causal and composite. This composite type of construct is something that, before I told you, is something that we design. We design. So there is not any missing item because actually we design. Right? What's the example? Okay. You can see this example. Frequency of watching television with children, right? This is our latent variable. We want to measure frequency of watching TV with children. We designed three items. We designed three items to measure this latent variable. Watching TV during the week, during weekdays, watching TV on Saturday, and watching TV on Sunday. So number of hours, for example, we watch TV with children in weekdays and in Saturday and in Sunday. These three items together create frequency of watching TV with children. So we don't have any missing item, right? Using these three items, we can measure frequency of watching TV. This variable is composite, formative composite. Each one cannot reflect whole meaning of construct. So we need to consider all three together. But when we consider these three, we can measure 100% meaning of latent variable. So this one is different with satisfaction. Because here satisfaction, when we consider these three and missing a few more variable, a few more items like environment, like accessibility, it means we miss some part. So we have error. We have error. So the formula is here, it's like this. So we have error term. But for composite, we don't have error term. Can you see my slide, right? When I move through a slide, right? You can follow.
Yes.
So this is the difference between composite and formative. And you can see the mathematical formula is different. Here for composite, we don't have error term. But for reflective, we have. Error term is missing items. Okay. There are some very good papers to differentiate between composite, reflective, and causal formative measurement. I put this table here from Hensler 2017. So you can read this slide and also this paper to understand a bit more about reflective, formative, and composite. Also, we published a paper on 2018, and in this paper, we clearly explain the meaning of reflective, formative in a very simple way, and composite, and the mathematical formula of each one, and what's the difference between reflective, formative, and composite latent variable. Also, you can refer to this paper. This paper is published in Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Technology in 2018. I want to discuss today is higher order latent variable, higher order construct, or higher order variable. Okay, when we, in social science, when we use items, when we apply latent variable and use item to measure each variable, always is not just one level and one connection. So it means always is not that we can measure latent variable based on a few items. Sometimes a latent variable has some dimensions, and actually we measure these dimensions by some items. For example, here I have perceived value, right? I want to see effect of perceived value on satisfaction. But perceived value has three different dimensions: functional value, emotional value, and social value. So perceived value is measured based on these three dimensions. But each dimension also measured by some items. Functional value is measured based on establishment, service, host provider, and price. Emotional value is measured based on novelty and hedonism. And social value also measured by some items. I include these items in my questionnaire. But these items don't measure perceived value directly. These items measure functional value. And these two items measure emotional value, and a few items measure social value. And these three dimensions measure perceived value. So our latent variable has some dimensions. In this case, we call this latent variable higher order, second order latent variable. First, so it means we have more than one layer. First layer is first order, that are measured based on questions and items in questionnaire. But second level is measured based on these dimensions, right? Like perceived value, like leadership in this framework. Here we have leadership, but leadership has 5 different dimensions, and each dimension measured by some items. So we have these items in our questionnaire, and these items measure integrity-oriented dimension, change-oriented dimension, reality-oriented dimension, task-oriented, and diversity-oriented dimension. So these 5 dimensions together create leadership. So sometimes we have latent variable with more than one level. In this case, still we are in measurement level. In this case, we call this latent variable higher order. If we have 2 layers, called second order. If we have 3 layers, called third order. Right? Latent variable. We need to assess reliability and validity for all these levels. For first level, for second level, for third level if we have. So reliability and validity and assessment of measurement model should be done for all levels if we have more than one level. Right? So this is the meaning of higher order construct and higher order latent variable. We have different types of latent variable, higher order. Sometimes first layer is reflective, second layer is also reflective. So it's reflective. Sometimes first level is reflective, but second layer is formative. Means dimensions formatively established, formatively for latent variable. So this is reflective formative. This one is first layer is formative, but second layer is reflective. So this is formative reflective. And another type is formative. So for higher order construct, we have based on nature of first layer and second layer, we have different types of higher order. And we need to apply suitable criteria for assessment of measurement model for first layer and second layer based on reflective and formative nature of first or second layer. Right? So this is for higher order construct.